All right, we are live, live,
Alrighty.
live, live. So, thank you for joining us, everyone.
Howdy,
I
howdy.
have our names up. So,
Okay.
I, of course, am Maggie, but I am just here for fun. I don't know why I'm here even. Really, our big draw today is Emilio. So, he's back again
There you go.
by popular demand. So
Like,
Emilio is amazing.
there
And
you-
literally after our last call, I was like, can you please come back again? So this call was booked literally after our last one.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to let him take it away. I'm actually going to give him full screen and I'm going to
Awesome.
remove myself from the screen and just let him go. And I will still be here. I'm just going to pop back on towards the
Okay.
end. So take it
Awesome.
away.
Sure thing. Well, Maggie, thanks for having me again. I had so much fun meeting with this group last time that had to come back. Absolutely. So today I want to share some good stuff with you. As you saw in the title for the event is Systemizing Your Secret Sauce. All right. So a little bit of background about me before we get into the topic. So as Maggie said, my name is Emilio. I own and run an organization called Curiosity Led. We're a strategic advisory firm, and we help organizations tackle all sorts of issues, mainly around operations and leadership development. And that's what I want to talk to you today is why it's such a fundamental skill to have. And it's good when you're just starting out, to get your ideal client identified, your core offer. But once you start making some sales, what comes next? Right? Because when you are running a business for the first time, right, and you have your secret sauce and your thing that's selling that people want, and it's super irresistible, now you have to really think about, is it dependent on you or not? Because if the company is dependent on you to run, then really what you've done is you've created another job for yourself, not really a sustainable business, right? Because a sustainable business should be able to run with or without you. And that's kind of what I want to talk to you guys about today is how to systemize that. Now, last time I was on, I spoke about mindset. So as we go through this, I'm going to be kind of sprinkling some of that mindset stuff in here as we go through. Um, but yeah, and as we go through, if you have questions, please drop them in the chat. And Maggie will moderate, come in. Just feel free to interrupt me, and we'll go from there. All right. So, how do you begin even systemizing your secret sauce? Well, again, like I mentioned, your secret sauce is what makes your program special, what makes you unique. So the first thing you have to do really is look at what does success look like in the various steps of the process. So you have to look at the whole process and you have to create what's called a workflow around the client journey, right? So when your client is first engaged with, not even when they first sign up with you, it's that first touch point all the way to when they make the transaction is where you want to start systemizing. So here's what I mean. When you put out a post on social media, let's say you're doing some type of social media selling. You're putting a post out, you're liking someone's post, maybe you're interacting in the comments, you take it to DM, you will go on to a phone call and then go from there. So you want to make sure that each step is documented because this is going to be your client acquisition process. And the better you can document this the way it is now, the easier it is to take that and then hand it over to a virtual assistant or somebody who will be helping you with the process down the road. Because the goal of systemization is not just to make you more effective and more productive, but also to make it easier for someone else to be just as successful when they step into the role, right? Because the name of the game is you stepping out, doing what you do best, what makes you great, and then begin to delegate the rest. So that's the first thing you want to look at. What are your current steps to getting that done? Excuse me. Your next step, you want to look at your client onboarding, right? So what is onboarding? So onboarding takes place after the transaction is made, and then what are the current steps to get them started? So that may seem, kind of a no-brainer, but onboarding is absolutely essential, because you can actually kill the client experience from the beginning, and then that sets the tone for the rest of their experience, and kind of negatively impacts their expectation. Right. So what are your steps from the moment they decide to buy from you till they get started? The next place you want to look at is from the point where they're finished onboarding. In other words, where they're already in your process. This may be a couple of modules deep into your program. If you're a coach, if you have a course, if you're selling a product, it could be from the moment they come into your store to when they start browsing. And it may be, they browse a few items, right? So now you want to make sure that the I guess the fulfillment portion right after onboarding is complete is also processed out. How do you want your client to navigate through your website, navigate through your program, navigate through your service? And you want to make sure that's processed out. This is the place where a lot of business owners spend a lot of their time, is tweaking and fine-tuning their delivery. And I'll give you some hacks on how you can minimize your time doing that, because actually spending a lot of time there in the fulfillment will only give you so much. You actually get more bang for your buck if you spend a lot more time in the recruitment and the onboarding phase, and also the offboarding, which we'll talk about in a moment. Now, also, while you're doing your fulfillment steps, you want to make sure you have frequent check-ins and touch points. Right. So the touch points are a little bit different than fulfillment, but they're linked together. What the touch points do as you go through is to evaluate as you go. So this way you're tweaking the fulfillment steps as you move the client through their journey. This is going to be your bread and butter to really refining those fulfillment steps, right? And making sure that you're hitting exactly the points that are most beneficial for your client. The last process in that we're going to look at in this client journey is your offboarding, right? So your offboarding is how your client leaves your service, your course, your product, your website, how they leave, because how they leave sets the tone for why they're going to come back. There's a book I'll recommend to you. It's called If Disney Ran Your Hospital. So, most of my career was in healthcare, so that's where I learned a lot of this stuff. But in that book, it talks about, when people leave Disney, if let's say they had a magical experience, right? Because that's what Disney is selling, it's the magic. So they have a magical experience. They were recruited well, onboarded well. Everything they wanted was fulfilled. But at the end, one person was either rude or just wasn't as enthusiastic. That's going to kill the entire experience. So the offboarding and the feeling people have at their last interaction with you is going to be the lasting memory that they have of working with you. Remember, we only remember how people made us feel, not necessarily what people said. And the last interaction is usually the first thing we remember. So you want to make sure you pay special attention to this offboarding. What does offboarding look like? In other words, you want to make sure that you're showing them the results. They're able to see the measurable results that they had from where they were when they started to when they finish. You want to have some kind of rewards and recognition in that offboarding process. So it's almost like they won a prize, right? Even if they didn't win the prize, it's about the psychology beyond that. It's giving them that congratulations. It's acknowledging that they worked hard to make it through that journey. Again, whether this is just navigating a website or going through a program or something like that. This is going to make sure that when they come back, they're going to be excited to come back and buy from you again. Right. So those are the things, again, to look at. So the first thing is your recruitment. Right. So you want to look at, first thing is actually, process out your current steps of what you're doing in terms of your recruitment. Right. Next is your onboarding. Next is your fulfillment. Then you want your touch points for process improvement. And then lastly, you want to look at your onboarding. Right. So this is just a way to chunk it out. So you don't have to take this whole client journey down in one bite. You could chunk it down into small projects, and you want to make sure that each one is the best possible quality you can. By documenting first, you're going to make sure that you know exactly what you're doing and you can hand it off. Some of the things to watch out for during this process is sometimes when we're documenting current state, we tend to try and fix as we go. But it's important that we look at the whole process so that we can understand, well, how does this piece here in recruitment connect to this piece in offboarding and strung throughout the program? There are always dependencies on the process. And I've fallen victim to this also when I was putting my leadership program together. I made all these mistakes that I was telling you not to make. So when I stopped doing it and chunked it out, it made it really effective. So remember, you don't want to fix the car as you're driving it, right? You want to at least have a framework so that you can make pit stops along the way and you can look at these chunks as that. Now, so that's the current process piece and getting your workflow. Now, before I go forward, I just want to check if there are any questions, comments, anything like that. All right. Let's see. Take silence as a no. All right. Great.
You're okay on questions.
Yeah.
I am actually hopping in and dictating like everything that you're saying. I am typing out in the comments so that way people can take notes easier.
Perfect. Awesome.
So I'm here and I'm like a secretary right now.
You're so funny.
Yeah. I'm in here typing it up.
There you go.
I'll just hop on here just as a reminder. I'm actually right here.
There you go. Awesome. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm here and I'm taking notes.
There you go. Awesome. All right. Now that we have this part of systemizing your secret sauce, right, which is documenting your current state, now you want to look at your future state, right? So you could take a couple of approaches. So your future state could be, creating a vision of what you want the client journey to look like, how it needs to change in order to fulfill that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you want to make sure that you don't jump to automation too quick. And that's the mistake that I see people make. So when you want to, when you want to now fix up your current state, right, and make it better, make it more efficient, so you can save time, be more productive, and work on that secret sauce, you want to make sure that you have everything documented so that you understand what the triggers are going to be, and that's where you're going to start. So for automation, you want to first understand what your triggers are, what starts the very next process. Again, this is why process mapping is so important. So for example, let's say your automation starts when somebody signs up for your lead gen, right? You put out a post, and then as soon as someone interacts with it, that should be a trigger for either them to, receive an email if they signed up for the mailing list, if they liked or commented, to have a message sent to them. There are some, message like Facebook Messenger chatbots and things like that can do that. So you want to figure out where the triggers are and then what the next step is that can be automated. So in your recruitment process, you want to look at, okay, what are the triggers? What do I want people to do? Then you want to look at what are the tools that I'm going to need in order to do that, right? So one tool that I recommend and that I use is called Dubsado. So Dubsado is where I document my workflows and where I document all of my triggers. Now, the good thing about Dubsado is that you can link up a lot of your, or pretty much all of your other automation tools, whether we're talking about payment, emails, CRMs, things like that. There are a couple of other tools out there, like Zapier is a good one to link everything that you need. So there's quite a few out there. But what you want to first, again, document is what are the triggers, and then Maggie says she uses Dubsado a lot for automation. Absolutely. It's a great tool. And I think it's free for your first 3 clients or something like that. So go check it out and play with it. It's a fantastic tool to do all of this. So again, once you do that and you identify your triggers, you want to see, well, what comes next? What is the action that you want the client to take through your journey? And then you look for what tools are available out there, what you may need to do manual because maybe you have a limited budget, what things you can begin to hire out, because it could be a human touch, right? So for example, if someone, interacts with your post, I'm going to use this social media type selling, right? So somebody interacts with your post. The first touch may be a human touch, right? And just starting a personal conversation before any type of automation. Well, you want to make sure you're documenting that so that you understand when you do hand that off, then you can begin to assess, well, what skills does a person need in order to be successful at this specific task, right? So the human factor within processes is where things start to get little muddled, little muddied, right? Because now you're dealing with someone else's personality, and I see this with a lot of clients. They try and superimpose what's in their head on someone else, and that, I'm going to tell you, does not work. There's an exercise I would recommend you try. If take a coat, right, and put it on a chair, and then take someone in your family or something, and then write down step-by-step instructions on how they should walk to the chair and put on the coat so that it's put on correctly. And you're going to see it's a little, it's easier said than done. And this will kind of illustrate why you need to make sure you're very detailed in what makes you successful at a particular task, even if it's just starting a conversation. So I'll give you an example. Part of my leadership program, I also teach sales. So this leadership program is specific for, startups and for small business owners. So when you're going through sales, right, how you approach the conversation is important, especially today, because people love to buy, but they absolutely hate to be sold. I can't tell you how many sales outreach I get from people on all of my platforms. And you know what? I just start trying to reverse sell at this point. But point is, it's the way you start the conversation is absolutely critical. So you want to make sure that the way that you outreach, the way your calls are handled, and the way sales are converted are documented. You want to make sure things are scripted out, that the tools that that the salesperson would need for objections and things like that are created and mapped out for them. Not so that they can stick to the script, but so they have a guide, right? Because you don't want to over process. You want to process just enough where people can understand and then put their own spin on it, right? So the next thing I would say for the human factor is also there's an element of control that needs to be let go. And this is also something that I've seen that's difficult for a lot of startups and small business owners to do, because they feel that if they're not involved, it's not going to get done right. So, it's not about processing it so much where the person doing the job doesn't have the freedom to really make it their own, but it's to do it just enough so that they're guided along the journey. And then those touch points that we talked about during the process, they're also going to come in handy when dealing with your team, right? Because these touch points, for example, they could be one-on-one weekly meetings where you talk about wins and you talk about areas of improvement, right? So when you do that, you can iterate and start asking questions like, well, what happened here where, it didn't convert? What do you think you could have done better? How are you going to improve it? And then, you can use this as an iterative type of performance improvement process. So I know it's kind of a lot, but it's the people aspect of the automation. The system stuff, really, again, it's looking at budget, what the triggers are, what the actions are, and what tools you're going to need in order to make that happen and to automate it, right? So that's just kind of a general gist. I know it's a lot of information given, but I just want to do a quick recap, and then I'll dive into any points that anyone has any questions on. So again, the first thing is to document your entire process as is, whether it's manual or not. You want to make sure you're creating a flow chart. To chunk it out, you want to start with your recruitment process. Then you want to look at your onboarding. You want to look at, your fulfillment steps, your process improvement touch points throughout, and then your offboarding, right? So this is going to help you, again, when you're looking to automate. In terms of automation, the things you want to look at in your workflow is the trigger that is going to trigger action from the system, and what action you want your client to take. Right. This is going to inform what tools you need, what processes you need in place, or where you need to hire someone to fulfill that process. All right. So that's kind of the general gist. So I'll open it up to any questions. Is there any specific area you want help with? or that I can go into greater detail?
I'm back.
Hey.
So, hey. So, yeah, I know a lot of people are catching the replay because they were hitting me up in the DMs.
Right.
But as far as my questions, I don't have too many because I used Dubsado as well.
Yeah.
I know that Trisha had chimed in and had a question about fixing as you go.
Sure.
So, can you elaborate more on the perils of fixing as you go? Because
Sure.
it's hard for perfectionists to be like,
Yes.
oh, I'll come back to that. Like,
Yeah. It's so fixing the car as you go is a knee-jerk reaction.
mm-hmm.
Right. And you're right. It is the perfectionist's Achilles heel, and it's also the high achiever's Achilles heel. Right. Because it's not about making the thing perfect. It's done is better than perfect. Think about a service that you've received, right? There may have been some kinks, but think about a service that you've been able to go through from start to end, and those that kind of got stalled, or you found yourself running on a hamster wheel because it seems like they didn't have everything figured out, right? So like the first few steps may be perfect, and then it may be bumpy down the road. So that's the thing. It's about consistency, and it's consistency over quality when you're first putting these together. Quality happens iteratively, right? So that means as you go delivering, your clients are going to tell you what they would want, right? So when you ask them, for example, as part of the offboarding, I would say you want to capture some data around, how satisfied were they with the program? What are some areas for improvement? And they'll tell you like, oh, it would have been nice to have an interactive workbook, right? Maybe they didn't have that. He just had worksheets.
Right.
So then you could go back and be like, okay, great, thank you. Then you go back and you create this workbook and you iterate and you put it in your process. And now because it's documented in your process, you can track it and measure it. Right. So that's the thing. It's perfection is not a bad goal to reach for. It's just the way we strive for it. It's not us that's going to come up with the improvements. It's our clients. So we have to let them do what they do best. In other words.
And that's definitely something I say all the time is don't create in a vacuum. Right. So once you do it, take it to the market, let them tell you what they need. And that's actually what I did with my program is once I brought it out, I realized we need a step before it.
Right.
Because a lot of people are like, is this in there? And I'm like, you don't know that yet. Yep. So let's create an incubator where we do that. So, and that's what you need when you're doing massive imperfect action. You just get it out there and let people tell you.
That's it. There's nothing wrong with that. And see, that's part of like what we spoke about last time I was on. It's that fear that stops you, fear of judgment, really. I mean, because what does it matter if you put a bad product in the market or where you're perceiving as a bad product? You'll find very quickly that the market is very forgiving. Right. So this, go ahead.
It is, and there is somebody who wants it. There just might not be 100 people who want it.
Absolutely. I mean, so this is my fifth business, the business I'm on now. And when I started it, now it's about 4 years old. I mean, it's evolved a lot since I started it. But before that, I mean, I had a clothing company. I had 2 web design companies, a graphic design company. I mean, you name it, I did it in the digital space. I had e-commerce. And the thing is, like, I would create something that I thought the market would need. And it failed miserably. But you know what? I'm back. And you know what? People that follow me on social media, they're still following me. Some of them, some of them don't. But, it's really about you being okay with getting the feedback you're scared of hearing, because ultimately at the end of the day, it's just feedback. And if someone tells you, hey, this sucks, or hey, this is not working, the way they say it is on them, but you have to listen for the valuable information that they're giving you, because whether it's constructive or not, in your opinion, there are always nuggets in that feedback. So let your clients tell you what they need. It's like an old example I heard from a program I bought. And we're saying it's like for Susie, if you want to know what Susie wants for lunch, right? You can go. You can say, okay, I know Susie's going to be hungry at lunchtime, so I know this great steak joint, and I'm going to get the best steak with baked potato and all that. And then you bring it to Susie. She says, "Oh, thank you, but I'm vegetarian." So what do so what are you going to do? It's like the best way to find out what she wants for lunch is just to ask her.
Right.
Yeah,
I know what you want.
That's it.
She might not know. That's the only downside.
Hey, what are you going to do?
That's how a lot of clients are. And they're like, "Oh, I'm not sure." And you're like, "All right, I'll come back with options."
That's right. If I could piggyback on that, because you hit a huge point that I talked to some clients about, I've been kind of tackling lately. It's how do you deal with your clients or prospects who don't know what they want? Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, this is about 80 to 90% of your clients are not going to know what they want. This should be part of your pre-onboarding process. So from your recruitment to your onboarding, this needs to be in there. You need a diagnostic or assessment tool. I'll give you a practical example for me. So before I finished my website, I asked for a copywriter to help me create a sales page, right? Because I thought that was what I needed. So I'm like, yeah, just help me out with copy. Then he hits me with this question. Okay, so what's your client journey? What do you want them to do? What do you mean?
You're like, I want them to buy my stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know, sign up, baby.
Like, I'm like, I'm a coach. I want them to buy my services. That was my thing. And he's like, okay, but how do you want them to do that? Like, and it got me thinking. And it's like, I thought, oh yeah, it's just, it's going to be easy. I just put it out there.
Click this button. That's what I want them to do.
Exactly. That's,
you don't think about all of the steps.
Yes.
And then you also don't think that there are people who are problem aware, people who are solution aware, and then all of a sudden you have to hit 3 different points.
That's right.
And you don't think about all of that, and you have to write for all 3 points.
That's right.
And every industry, not just coaches, not just service providers, but product. Every single industry has to write for 3 different people.
That's
or
right.
3 different stages of a person. So each person has 3 slices, and you have to write for all of them.
That's right.
And nobody thinks of that.
That's right.
Not up front.
Yeah, and that's what I had to learn. I didn't know any of that. So I'll give you another example. So my background is in talent learning and organizational development. So I specialize a lot in adult learning theory, and it's exactly like that. People who are visual, audio, and tactile learning. So when I was delivering my coaching, at first it was just auditory and then some visuals, and now I had to mix it. There has to be some work that they take with them, something they can see and watch develop, and then something they hear, because you have to fulfill for all stages and all people. So it's real interesting, but it's the stuff you don't think about, and that's what documenting will help you do. Like, that's why we do all this work ahead of time, so that when we're doing that, we're like, oh, okay, well, I'm missing something here. This is where I need a little more work.
Yeah. And it's really, that's what's amazing about coaching, is that you think to teach how you learn.
Yep.
So it's not until you document out that process that you see, oh, this could use a worksheet, because I'm only teaching to the audio learners.
That's right.
Like, I'm not teaching to the doers.
That's right.
I'm not teaching to this style.
That's
and
right.
Processes fix so many things that you just don't think about if that's not how you think, because there are so many different ways.
That's right. Yeah. So 2 terms right here that we're hitting you with, folks, that I'll kind of chunk out. It's 2 types of intelligences, right? It's learnability and metacognition. So learnability is learning about the way you learn and learning about the way other people learn, because the way you learn is how you're going to teach. Learning the way other people learn is learning how they're going to receive what you teach. And then metacognition is about thinking about the way you're thinking. It's
there you go.
Yeah.
I didn't even know I was using those terms.
Yeah.
I was just using my brain.
There you go.
So that's right. I meant to use those terms.
Yeah, there you go.
I was totally on purpose.
Exactly.
I'm so smart. That's
there you go.
I'm so smart. But but it's so true. And you don't, it's just not until you're in the market and you fail with a course. Like, I had a course that did so well in my beta test. Everybody got results. Everybody did so well. Took it to market. No idea how to market it because I didn't know those slices.
Yeah.
I was
Same with
talking like
me.
a business robot. I was like, results, your return on investment will be amazing. And people are like, yeah, that's not how I buy things. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
So it's all about speaking to the market, making sure you're teaching right. It's all about all those things. And they all start with a process. It is
That's right.
foundational.
That's right. Yeah.
Foundational.
If there's one takeaway from this little exchange we've had for everyone listening, it's start with curiosity, right? Actually, you should start with courage, but you want to lead with curiosity. And the reason I say start with courage is, like we were saying before, you want to be courageous in seeking feedback. And you want to be okay with whatever feedback you receive because you will emerge better from it. But you also want to be led by curiosity. Be curious about people. We use these terms. You and I have thrown a lot of these terms around in this conversation, but when we say the market and, when we say your prospect and your client, it's all people.
They're just humans.
That's it.
They're humans.
You got to be genuinely curious about people. If you want to be good at sales, if you want to, have a dynamite coaching program, or you want to really become a leader in the service you're providing, or even the products you're selling, be genuinely curious about people, how they learn, how they feel, what they're afraid of, what stresses them out, what pisses them off. What things do they love? What kind of values do they have? Where do they hang out on social media, right? Like all these little things. But it matters at the end of the day, because if you're a person who genuinely cares about people, you can use this to better serve them. And I'll close that thought by saying sales, right? Sales is usually the place where people get stalled. Right. And they work on their process so they don't have to sell and get on the phone. Right. So I'll close.
Yeah, they're like, maybe I can close in the DMs. Maybe if I just do that, I won't have to get on a call.
Oh my God.
Which,
yeah.
DMs are great for warming someone up, but you got to talk to them. We're people.
Yeah, absolutely.
People buy from people. Like that's
it. That's
it.
And so selling is a service. That's the way I look at it. I mean, listen, everyone here who's listening to this, you have a zone of genius. You have a gift that the world needs.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't do your best to learn the skills to get that gift in front of the people who need it, you're doing them a disservice. If you don't do your job to sell them effectively in a way that speaks to them and their emotions and their values, then you're doing them a disservice. Your fear is causing you to hold back on your purpose and to not push your gifts out there. So I'll close that thought with that, but we can move on from there if you want.
We'll have you back. We'll have you back next month. You're going to be a monthly guest, and we'll have you back next month, and you can talk about sales.
Oh, all right. Now here we go. I'm good with that.
Seriously, if you love Emilio, here's where you find him. You can pitch yourself. Like
there you go. Yeah.
Normally I'm pitch free space, but Emilio, pitch yourself. Yeah. Like
I appreciate that.
How do you work with him?
Sure. You can work with me in several ways. There's a couple tiers of services that I give. But first, if you just want to find me on social, you want to just talk on DM and whatnot, you can search me up, Emilio Osoria, on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. You can visit my website, curiosityled.com, where you'll get some more details.
It's so good.
There you go.
It's so good. I didn't make it, by the way. I'm not just tooting my own horn. It's just so good.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So visit my website, curiosityled.com. You'll see there's some of the services I offer. So primarily what I do a coaching for startup businesses and small businesses. I also do leadership development, training and coaching for, mid-sized leaders or larger organizations. And I also do strategic advisements for all size businesses. So we could talk more in detail if you're interested on how that would work for you. We could decide what package is the best fit for you. Also, there is a book coming out, Curiosity Led. Yes, so that'll be coming out this October. So be on the lookout for that as well. It'll talk about a lot of these concepts that I'll be sharing on here.
Yeah, that's you definitely have to come back on when that comes out.
Oh, absolutely.
We'll do like a book club.
Ooh,
in the group.
Watch out.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Awesome.
So that's amazing. That's how we work with Emilio. Thank you so much for coming on. It's
Yeah, thanks
always
for having me.
so good.
Awesome.
So good. Like
Good.
everything is awesome. And yeah, like totally aligned on the sales point.
Yeah.
So good. All right. If you have any questions for Emilio, he is in the group now. I added him yesterday. So drop it in the comments. I know a lot of people are catching replays because school started for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So it was like people were hitting me up in DMs going, yeah, I can't make it. I know I said I would, but I can't.
Yeah.
I'm like,
it's all good. We hear you. We're there with you.
And I was like, I'm leaving this up. This isn't one of those that I take away and they go places later. This is staying up. This is evergreen content. It'll be here forever. So you can watch it whenever.
Awesome.
Yay. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.